Welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review, folks. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson. This is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi, guys.
And tonight we'll be reviewing an adaptation of Jane Austen's novel that's more of a zombie rendition of it, called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Now, this is
which was released in 2016. So go on, Mike.
Yeah, this is an action, comedy, horror, stroke parody of Pride and Prejudice. That's why we're doing this this review.
For a long time,
Pride and Prejudice has been a well-done movie, TV series, blah, 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 blah. Everyone seems to be wanting and doing it, but when you get a cross-genre, where you get something like this and then throw some zombies or something else, or whatever, werewolves, it takes on a whole new life, pardon the pun. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I have read the book and I've watched this movie, and I see a lot of differences between the book and the movie, the Pride and Prejudice zombie book. I refer to the original in the book itself. It plays out the same storyline word for word, with only a few bits where they mention zombies in the text here and there.
So follow the Jane Austen book.
Jane Austen, yeah.
I just said Jane Austen. Just follow Jane Austen's version of it, but do through some zombie stuff into it.
Instead of talking about women being accomplished in music, singing, dancing, they just throw in zombie killing too.
Yeah, I think the Bennet girls went to China and studied martial arts so they can come back and protect themselves and their family from the zombie holocaust.
Exactly so.
And I think Mr Darcy, he went to Japan and learned his trade over there.
Yeah, well, they said in this movie that Japanese fighting skills were meant for the wealthy and privileged, and the Chinese are for the wise and clever.
Something like that, yeah.
Something. I like that. It's mentioned in the dialogue at the beginning of the movie.
Something like that. Anyway, here we go. Now, all my usual stuff I get through here. Okay, now, believe it or not, there's a million people here who were involved in the production side of it. Well, not a million, lots. Okay, here we go. Sean McKittrick, Alison Shearmur, Natalie Portman, Annette Savage, Brian Oliver, Tyler Thompson, and Mark Boutin. I think it's the right pronunciation. So all those people were involved in the production. There might have been some other sneaky people in behind the scenes there, but they're the main ones listed.
Natalie was offered to play Elizabeth Bennet, but dropped out, so she decided to
still be a producer.
After all.
Maybe she didn't suit the role, or maybe she didn't want to do the role. I don't know. Don't know why. Anyway, here we go. Directed by Burr Steers, he actually wrote the screenplay, or what I say, rewrote it, because several people were writing the script before him based on the book, and he rewrote it before it was committed to the movie, because obviously it had been corrupted and bastardised. That's a real word. So much, he brought back more of the Pride and Prejudice feeling to it, more in line with the book, the way it's supposed to be, and throwing the zombie stuff in. So he worked really hard to bring it in.
Yeah, just so you guys know, I have in the past read books like the parody ones, like Mike mentioned, and most of them dealing with Jane Austen or Jane Eyre type angles. Like there was one called Mansfield Park and Mummies, which was really cool.
That would have been interesting.
It would have been interesting. You would have loved it, Mike. That had vampires and mummies.
Have they made a movie that one?
Sadly, no. There is some Sense and Sensibility with sea monsters.
Okay.
And I don't know other ones. I heard of a Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
No, I've seen that one. That's not bad.
Yeah, that was based on the book
two Abraham Lincolns. Like one is Zombie Killer, one's Vampire Hunter. I think it's just two movies. I think could be wrong.
Yeah. So they made a few adaptations here and there, and while some of them may not have graced our silver screen, I guess a few people out there are trying to figure out whether or not we'll ever see those ones on the silver screen eventually.
Yeah, well, who knows? You never know. Okay, here we go. Drum roll. Okay. This movie was a critical failure at the box office.
Yikes.
Doesn't mean it's a bad film.
Nope.
It just means that people couldn't get off on the movie. Okay, now it went through a development hell with budgetary disputes holding pre-production. That they had several people involved with directors over the period of time. Yes, no, in, out, whatever. The script was rewritten several times. It just so much was going on. I think probably that may have contributed to it, but I think what the biggest problem was, they didn't get the target market right.
Ooh.
It was rated as a PG-13.
Okay.
Now, if they had that in mind at the beginning, they would have dumbed all the violence down to make it acceptable as a PG-13.
I see what you mean. I see
So
what you're getting at.
they could have had a tad more violence, action type stuff in the movie to make it more acceptable to the older people.
Yeah, because
You see? So,
I did
It's
notice...
sitting on the fence.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
what you mean.
yeah.
Understand. I also think
Yep.
some of the scenes were meant for a more of an adult audience more than a 13-plus audience.
I think they should aim more at the horror part of it with the comedy, and horror
Like-
and action and stuff, and just forget about the kiddies and just raise the rating a bit.
Because there was a little bit of
might be
sexual.
better.
There's a lot of sexual tension between.
There was a bit,
especially the bit where
Well, a little
where
bit,
the
yeah.
women, Lizzie, the Bennet women, they wear holsters underneath their dresses,
And they'd go to balls and stuff.
and
I mean, the typical
hidden
Pride and
daggers and
Prejudice
stuff.
type movie, but with zombies thrown in. Instead of being accomplished piano players, they were really good with knives and axes and stuff, and martial arts. So but I think should have been aimed more for an older crowd. So they could have done a little bit more with the action scenes, a bit more blood, a bit more gore, and it probably would have scored a lot better at the box office. I think that's where the failing part was. Now, having said that, the budget was $28 million. And it made about 16.4 at the box office. Now, I don't know what's done at home media. Maybe they've picked up a tad more. I don't know. But that's where the problem is. The reviewers were mixed. Some said it was good, some said it was mediocre, some said it was poor. So even the critics couldn't agree on it. But I think what I said before, they didn't get the target market right because even the critics couldn't agree. Something was lacking. And I think it was, that focus on who do we want to see this movie.
Yeah, so who casts in... I mean, who's directs,
I've done
produces...
I've done all that.
Okay, not those parts. Who stars in it is a big
well,
question.
Natalie Portman was going to be in it. She wasn't. Okay.
No, she wasn't.
No, okay. I'll just rattle off a few of them.
Rattle on.
Now, the first half dozen or so, but Lily James plays Elizabeth Bennet.
She's pretty.
Yeah, she's actually a very attractive girl. Sam Riley plays Colonel Fitzwilliam Darcy.
Yeah.
We all miss a Darcy.
Yeah,
in these
I read
days.
somewhere
Pride
that
Prejudice
I think
movies,
they took two of the characters. There was a Darcy. He's had a cousin who was a colonel. So I guess they smished two characters together.
They mixed them, yeah. Okay, here we go. Bella Heathcote played Jane Bennet. Ellie Bamber played Lydia Bennet. Millie Brady played Mary Bennet. Suki Waterhouse played Kitty Bennet. Now, here we go. Douglas Booth played Mr. Bingley. Now, when I watched this movie, I thought to myself, I've seen this guy before, almost in the same clothes.
Yeah,
And he starred in the Mary Shelley biodrama.
A year before this.
Yeah, year before. Yeah, and he looked exactly the same, almost dressed the same, similar period, obviously. But he played Percy Shelley.
Yeah, he
I
also
thought,
was.
I know his face.
He was also in Great Expectations.
Was
He Charles Dickens version,
okay.
and he played the lead protagonist in that one too.
Okay, here we go. I'll mention one or two more. Jack Houston played George Wickham.
Smooth.
And I'll just mention the last two or three here. Sally Phillips played Mrs. Bennet, Mummy Dearest. Charles Dance played Mr. Bennet. I know Charles Dance from somewhere. I don't know. Matt Smith plays Parson William.
We know who
Collins.
he is. He's the guy who was in Doctor Who, wasn't he?
I believe so. I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but I believe he was. And he plays. He's probably the funniest guy in the whole lot because he's got one of those weird roles, so he can camp it up a little bit. So I will mention one more here. Lena Headley plays Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Bourgh? Bourgh? Berg. Anyway, and she is rather a formidable lady, very attractive.
Yeah.
But she's sort of like, she's sort of
A pirate?
No, she had a sort of eye poked out by a zombie or something. But what would you say? Would she's like a matriarch of a family or something? I don't know.
I guess you call her a matriarch.
Yeah,
I guess.
she's sort of like people used to come to her and talk to her like a head of the family, like the don of in the mafia or something. So she was like, she must have the high posting. I wasn't quite sure what she was supposed to be.
Or grand dame, whatever.
But, well, grand dame, but there's some other couple of people here I won't go on to.
Yeah.
But yeah,
because most of the time they're just in the background most of the time.
And a bit actors. Yeah, the other ones behind it, co-stars and bit pieces. Anyway, they're the main ones anyway. And look, honestly, the cast wasn't bad. I think it was well suited to the movie. And like I said, it was just a poor, a good example of poor focus on the end result. And I think that's why it didn't go good at the box office. Doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
No duh.
No. That's why we decided to review it, because it's a good watch. It captures the Pride and Prejudice feeling, that period sort of movie, and has the fun of there's some zombies, undead running around and stuff, and a bit of blood here and whatever. And it's a fun story, one for the kiddies. Sort of, it was 13 plus. Yeah.
True. So shall I begin with telling the story?
I think you should.
So the story begins with the famous dialogue, "It's a truth, general knowledge, that a zombie is out to secure more brains." Well, not in those terms, but you get the gist. And it goes on about how the zombies has started spreading around the England.
Okay. In early 19th century England, it's besieged by zombies.
Exactly.
And the Bennet sisters have been sent away to learn the weaponry, martial arts, yada yada, to defend themselves, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. And the usual storyline goes on from there. If the parties and balls trying to get the girlies married off.
Yeah. All the time, people trying to keep a good profile about things. Keep on doing the things that they normally do. Cooking, baking. Going to 10 balls, and all that stuff, and card parties.
Yeah, that's all stuff, House parties and different things,
Darcy goes to one of these card parties. I guess they're called whisk parties.
Something like, They're all playing, I think they're playing all maybe the same card games. Whatever that is. I know what whiskey is.
Yeah. He's got wind of that there might be some zombies about.
Yes,
and
one stuck in.
Yeah, it turns out it was the one of the men there and his daughter whom started sprouting her and eating someone else's body parts.
Nice. I'd prefer a McDonald's myself.
Then we cut to the Bennet's home. Everyone is hears about dear old Mr. Bingley, a new man who's come to the area, Netherfield, if that's the word, and he's got this new house and he hopes to settle down there and hopefully may choose a wife.
Now he's loaded. Bingley has just inherited £100,000, and that's about the equivalent of £6.7 million today. In American dollars, that might be about 9 mil, I think. 9 to 10 million American dollars. There.
Yeah. Anyway, the girls think this is great, and their mother thinks this is wonderful. That way she'll marry off one of her 5 little girls to said Bingley. Mm-hmm. So they head down to the ball, and we're there. We meet Mr. Bingley, who's not bad looking. It's in the past they often cast Mr. Bingley as a less equivalent of the interesting character.
Yeah, they used to make Darcy look really good and Mr. Bingley look average.
Yeah. I've seen it several times in several movies and TV miniseries.
Yeah.
It's not always a pretty...
He's not an attractive man. I'm a guy. It's really, he's looking really good. No, but he's a good looking guy and he would have been a good catch for one of the Bennet girls,
As long as you're blind.
Oh, he wasn't that bad. The Reverend Collins was pretty pathetic.
True.
I wouldn't marry him if I was a girl.
Yeah, so he's good looking, and Mr. Darcy is in a rough leather jacket kind of way, but really cool.
He's a man's man sort of thing. A bit ruggedy, but ruggedly handsome and stuff, and that brooding look, and you know the type. He's got a job to do.
Yeah, and while Lizzie overhears this conversation about her sister and her Mr. Bingley, being Jane is the most attractive looking girl there, Darcy thinks Elizabeth is less the equivalent when you think about it. But Elizabeth is, in this one, she's rather attractive in that sexy romance novel kind of way when you think about it.
Well, I liked her.
Anyway, she heads outside, fed up with his lingo, and she leaves a bit of a noisy exit when you think about it. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
she goes outside the garden, doesn't she?
Yes, she does, and she runs into a zombie who was speaking to her, and then dear old Darcy shoots the bitch.
Blows the head clean off.
And she then more zombies start appearing, and then Lizzie and her sisters, they head back inside and start tearing those zombies to bits.
And they're really, really good.
And this is where Darcy's impressed with her fighting skills and says that he's really impressed by her brightness of her eyes when she's her movements.
When she's slicing heads off zombies, looks so good and delicate.
That's not that bad.
Like a little flower.
He's just admires how she does it and all that stuff.
She has style. She has grace. She has poise.
Oh, yes.
And blood lever.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Eventually, next morning or next few days, Jane gets a letter from Bingley's sisters asking her to dine with them at Netherfield. And so her mother is excited about this, but she suggests she take one of their horses instead of a carriage down to Netherfield.
Why? I'll never know.
Beats me.
Maybe the carriage is for repair or something.
I think that according to Miss Bennet, she says that it's starting to rain, which means that you may stay overnight, meaning you may get to spend a bit more time with him.
What a cagey mummy, hey?
Unfortunately, on the way, through the woods, she comes across a male zombie, and she kills it, of course, but she also ends up injuring herself because of her firearm.
Yeah, those little flintlocks sort of guns there, you put powder in. Well, it backfired onto her hand, and wasn't loaded primed properly, so she burned her hand. Yeah.
She also confronts two other zombies in the woods. I don't know what happens next because we don't see what happens next.
It's a mother and baby, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really creepy. But we don't see
a baby zombie being held by a mummy zombie. So
one can think that Jane's killed them and she just continued on her way forward.
We'd like to think she put them out of the misery, but
Anyway, we cross to Netherfield, and Jane is bedridden, and
Darcy gets a fever or something from the thing hitting her hand.
And Darcy suspects maybe she might have contracted the
zombie
pandemic thing.
But she didn't.
No. Soon enough, Elizabeth arrives and she's walked the rest of the way. She's a big walker person in this movie. Which is mentioned in all the adaptations of Pride and Prejudice. She walks all the time in those ones. Anyway, back to the story. Mm-hmm. She does go to Jane's room, and we find out that it was actually a gun that misfired and hurt her hand. Yeah, we saw a bit of bone, but other than that, no infection.
It took a wad of skin off just behind next to your thumb there, that little pad there.
Yeah, Darcy
had a big hole about the size of a dollar coin or something. Yeah.
Darcy takes out a special vial that has teeny weeny flies that kind of indicate whether there's an infection around.
No. He calls them carrion flies, and they're attracted to dead meat.
Mm-hmm, true.
Not virus, dead meat. So if you're dead, the flies will go and land on you because you're dead meat. Hey, that's a good name for a website, isn't it?
Too late.
It's being done by Whatsy-Who's-It, isn't it? Yeah.
James H. Nice. My favourite movie reviewer. Even Mikey doesn't...
Look, I don't like his style. He's good. He's got a good following and good luck to him, but I don't like that sort of reviewing.
I just really admire his energy.
He's very energetic and very smart and funny and everything else. He really digs deep into his reviews. So we do a different style of reviewing, that's all.
Yeah.
No, he's good. I have heard him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have seen him. And
he's made a big name for himself.
Yeah, he's done really good. Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say is that so the carrion flies, he calls them, will only settle on dead meat.
Yes. But luckily Jane, she actually uses her karate skill or kung fu skill, snatches those flies one by one and crushes them into a palm and drops them into his
Mr.
hand.
Darcy's hand. So she's
Meaning
saying, "You're not going to test my system."
Yeah. Later on that evening, she goes to their to the lounge room where they're playing cards, and she decides to select a book, and she impresses them with her knowledge of speaking Chinese and all that stuff. And she doesn't like how Darcy's all about, I'm looking for a nice, very proficient woman.
I speak Chinese.
Really?
There's some fried rice, curry prawns, and some light cheese. There you go.
Very funny.
That's Chinese, isn't it? Oh,
No.
Sorry.
So, Darcy is a bit nerved that she doesn't like him very much, and he goes outside and starts chomping down some trees in the night.
He practices with his sword with these little topiary type trees. I don't ficuses or whatever. And I'm thinking, how rude. Did he ask whether he can chop the trees up?
I don't know.
How? Yeah.
But
it's not his tree.
True, it's Bingley's home after all.
He chopped his
Anyway,
trees up. Very nice.
Later the next morning, let me see. Her mum and her other sisters arrive, checking to see if Jane is all right. Of course, instead of sticking around, Elizabeth and Jane, who's still a bit worn out from the arrival and all that stuff, they decide to leave. And of course, Miss Bennet is a little bit taken back that they're not going to stick around a little longer. But Elizabeth is bent on leaving.
Oh, she's bent. I'm a bit bent myself, actually.
Yeah. They then get into the coach, and then they pass an orphanage full of dead zombie children, and the girls withdraw their firearms to be on the safe side.
Just, you never know your luck.
We then see Jane revived. She's back at home, happy, and Mr. Bennet gives them news that they're going to have a dinner guest shortly. That's his cousin, who will inherit the estate unless when he passes away, and then they'll be left on the street if they don't get married, which is the whole point of this whole thing, to make sure that these girls get married off, and
so they have something,
because back in those days, if you weren't married off, you would be either forced to leave or live.
He'd be, that's what, if they didn't marry you off into a good marriage or somebody else, a bit of money behind them or some assets or whatever, they end up being a burden on the family, and someone has to support them.
Exactly, and that's probably, I don't know if that ever happened in real life.
It did, yeah. That's and they might get an allowance to live on, but they basically pretty much live in the house and just attend the parties and do whatever. Do they exist? They don't really have much for life.
Yeah. Soon enough, Mr. Collins arrives, and he is a total waste of space.
Oh, he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be. Even in the Jane Austen book, he's a bit of a comedy relief.
Yeah, he's a
he wasn't good looking. He was obnoxious. Everything else.
Yeah.
Nobody was going to marry this guy. Even if he's the last guy on Earth, a female would not want to marry this guy.
Yeah. He then tries to. He does eventually brings up that he'll marry Jane because she's the eldest, and usually the eldest get married first. But of course, Miss Bennet says, unfortunately, my daughter at the moment is in a relationship at the moment, or something like that.
Yeah, well, she might be heading in that direction with somebody else.
Yeah, and so Elizabeth is a likely candidate for.
She got the short straw.
Yeah. So the girls later on, they decide to go walk to Meryton, where they're going to visit an aunt of theirs that lives there, I think.
Why would you walk? All these zombies running around. I'll never know, honestly.
I don't know.
I'll go in an armoured car myself.
Maybe Meryton is not too far from.
They didn't have cars, did they? No.
And anyway, so they gathered up all their weapons, and they head off down to Meryton. And along the way,
that's carrying all the muskets, so was it?
Yeah. They then run into an oil carriage, whatever, and they shot the dead zombie.
A lamp oil cart had been attacked by zombies, and the lady trying to get out of it, who was a lamp oil lady, has already been turned into a zombie.
Then they continue on to Meryton, and Lizzie is holding all the muskets, I think.
I don't know why.
And Mr. Bingley said, Mr. Collins, I should say, tries to help her, but he just doesn't even help her.
No, he picks them up, he slings one over her arm and puts one back on. Yeah, he just reloads her.
Yeah,
He doesn't
what a
actually carry
horrible
anything.
man.
No, it's a comedy.
I know it's a comedy.
I'll help you. And he picks it up and puts it back in her arms so she can carry it
Yeah,
properly.
very chivalrous.
Yeah, it's
Not.
comedy.
I know, but he's not very chivalrous.
No, he wasn't. Yeah.
Anyway, they head off to Meryton. They finally got there, and they meet the soldiers in the red coats, I should say.
Well, they used to wear red coats.
Yeah, and
that was,
both Kitty and Mary, Kitty and Lydia are smitten by these guys because they're really hot.
Well, they were smoot.
Yeah,
Is Mr. Buglugs there?
Wickham, yeah,
Wickham
yeah,
was there,
he's in ordinary clothes, but he's gonna plan on joining up eventually, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, and Lydia.
He was one of them. Made in plain clothes, but he hadn't put his clothes on. Yeah.
Lizzie is smitten by him, and we get a backstory into how he is was a son of a steward for the late Mr. Darcy, Mr. Darcy's father. And of course he was really nice to her, but they run into the current Mr. Darcy, who doesn't take it that likely that he's around, so he heads off.
He doesn't like Wickham.
Yeah.
They used to be childhood friends.
But,
more of that later.
Yeah. So anyway, as they continue on, they eventually hear that there's going to be a bit of a party coming. That's at Neverfield, because both Mrs. Bennet and her daughters asked would they be able to have a party at his place as a bit of a way to make friends and stuff like that.
As one would.
So,
but doesn't Wickham take? What's he out for a ride on a horsey to go see another party?
Later, part.
Okay.
Anyway,
at the same time,
Wickham, he does come to the party, but he doesn't stay too long, and then just Collins takes Lizzie on the dance floor, and he dances like a total.
Yeah, he ain't John Travolta. I'll tell you right now. Yeah.
But then again, as I said in the books, he dances really horrible in that one too.
Yep.
So anyway, moving on. So anyway, then a bit of another zombie outbreak happens at Neverfield.
That's right, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, up and down in this
basement
or cellar or kitchen anyway.
Whatever.
And they said, one of the zombies says that we were invited in by someone in the inside.
We probably found out later on who it was. Mm-hmm. I know.
So anyway, thanks to Darcy and Lizzie, they were able to stop the outbreak or the zombies from attacking the party guests.
Yes, they're lovely.
Of course, Bingley is useless. He couldn't even.
Yeah, he's not very good. He's a gentleman sort of guy.
But and again, anyway, next morning him and his sisters and Darcy, they leave the district. Yeah. And Jane gets this sad, sappy letter saying that from Mrs. Bingley's sister, Mr. Bingley's sister, saying that they plan on going off to London so that Mr. Bingley can continue courting Mr. Darcy's sister, Georgiana.
Whatever.
Anyway, this is upsetting, and there's an end to it. And then Mr. Collins comes up to Liz and tells her, "Will you marry me? I'll be a good husband, all that stuff. But provided, could you please disdain from being a soldier or a warrior?
Stop fighting off the zombies.
And that way, because I don't think I like firearms in our house.
Because he's a minister, past and whatever. Yeah. He didn't think it'd be right for a minister's wife to be a zombie hunter or a zombie killer. Yeah.
Of course, Lizzie rejects this offer and tells her, and her mother keeps telling her, "You will accept his offer." Yada yada yada. But of course, her husband, Mr. Bennet, says to Liz, "If you do not marry Mr. Collins, your mother will never speak to you again." and I will never speak to you if you do.
To marry. So
Meaning
that was on her
he
side.
has her full-fledged support not to marry this creep.
Yeah, he is a creep, honestly. Yeah. You know the type.
Oh, yes.
Lord.
Anyway, Liz walks off into the woods, and her dad forbids her from walking off into the woods because it's a dangerous place.
Zombie.
She then meets 4 black
Well, she
figures.
sees them from behind, doesn't she?
Yeah, yeah. In the opening scene, we found out about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which means that these guys play a big part in this movie.
And also in the Bible.
Uh-huh.
In Revelations.
Yeah, Wickham appears and he tells her about this secret place where these zombies have secretly, are at church and they're eating cow brains.
He didn't tell those zombies.
Okay, he doesn't tell her.
He said, I'm going to take you to another type of a ball or something rather. Yeah. And under a pretext, he takes her to the church.
Okay, he takes her to this.
Yeah. And they're back at the church and she realises they're all dead.
Undead.
Well, dead, undead, whatever. They're not living people like you and I.
Yeah. See, these guys are fed
pig's brains.
Pig's brains.
And they're civilised dead people. Mm-hmm. How's that?
Yeah, and dear old Wickham just says he needs money in order to try to get the public to see that not all zombies are bad and maybe they could be saved or spared.
Yeah, or learn to coexist with them.
Yeah.
So there's going to be they're outnumbering the living people, and so we'll eventually take over the world almost. So you might as well learn to live together in harmony. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, Lizzie then hears that her friend Charlotte is going to marry Mr. Collins, and she wants her to chaperone her at the estate where she's going to meet Catherine de Bourgh, Mr. Darcy's aunt.
Oh, that's right, Mr. Darcy. That's right. Yeah, that's who she was. I couldn't remember what was. Yeah, Mr. Darcy's aunt, lady, whatever her name was.
Who was practically a very, very strong warrior type, and her house is like guarded like a fortress.
And she's good looking too. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Anyway, so Lizzie gets invited to stay with the Collinses, and there we get to meet Catherine de Bourgh and her nephew, Mr. Darcy. And dear old Wickham arrives, and he tries to convey his thoughts across to them, and they think there's no way of sophisticating a zombie. Civilizing a zombie.
Yeah.
So there's no chance of that.
And he's trying to plead their case, and as one would, and they're saying, Darcy's saying no.
Yeah, because he sees through Wickham's
he knows Wickham a lot better than everybody else does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Lizzie just sees it as another random excuse that he's not... that he's refusing to do what his dad wishes. He's when his dad died, Wickham was offered a certain amount of money so he can live off, and unfortunately that money has been wasted,
squandered, if you will. Yes.
Anyway, back to the story. Later that night, as Lizzie couldn't sleep, she meets Wickham later that night at the house, at Collins's house, and Wickham tries to persuade Liz to run off with him. But she says no, and so he heads off into the shadows, joking about how the wealthy are not safe inside their homes, all that stuff. Anyway, back to the story. Next morning, Mr. Darcy arrives at Collins's house, and he pleads his case with Lizzie Bennet, saying he arrogantly likes her and he wants to marry her. Unfortunately, Liz approaches him. She finds out from Wickham that very night that the reason the Bingley and his sisters left Netherfield was because Darcy told Bingley to cease the relationship.
Well, but he overheard her mother.
Yes, her mother was blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I finally got rid of my daughter off to this rich guy. Blah. Yeah.
During the ball, of course, and
didn't like that.
Yeah, and so we get this interesting, intimate fight scene between with Lizzie and Darcy, which is really.
Yeah, a bit of martial arts involved there and stuff. Yeah, very.
It involved.
It
involved.
Not very ladylike.
True, it was really kind of intimate and cool. Anyway, Darcy.
Intimate fighting.
Well, it was kind of cool.
Oh, look, but some buttons came off here and there with swords and stuff. Yeah. I suppose.
And him. What's the word? What's the word when someone jumps on top of you?
Fun.
No, I mean, never mind. He pins her to the floor a couple of times, which is kind of erotic.
He straddles her.
Straddle her. Yeah, that's the word. Straddle is the word I'm looking for.
Putting it down. He wasn't doing anything naughty.
He was eyeing her, and he probably enjoys her hot breathing.
Nice boobs, yeah. The buttons came undone a bit. Yeah. Very, very nice. I love two of those.
Anyway, he eventually. He makes his leave, tells her that he all the best, and the Collinses arrive, say, five seconds later.
Yeah, they walk in the door.
Yeah,
he walks out. He walks in.
And this is where Liz tells Charlotte that Mr. Darcy has practically forced Mr. Bingley to stay away from her sister. We also get he also sends her a letter later on where she reads from
and he explains
outside,
the whole lot.
and he explains how that his father, he loved Mr. Wickham as a son, and he did what his dad's wishes were when he passed away, to give him some money, and which of course we mentioned squandered away.
Yeah, but there's something here. He and Wickham were childhood friends.
Yes.
But Wickham may have murdered Darcy's father to get the money.
Yeah. Anyway.
He squandered the inheritance, like you said.
Yeah, and somehow his father turns into a zombie, and Mr. Darcy, in his being mercifully kills him.
His father, yeah. So that would make sour you to your old childhood friendship, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, he then tells her that he did force Bingley to leave her sister, and it was he thought he was doing the right thing. He also brings up in the letter about there's going to be an upcoming zombie outbreak, and the only way to prevent this from happening is to destroy the bridge. And he tells her to be prepared for the worst that might happen. So later on, she returns back to her home, and Jane arrives, tells her the bad news that Kitty ran off with no, it's not Kitty. I mean Lydia runned it off with George Wickham, and I think it's a pretext that she didn't run away. I think she was kidnapped or abducted.
We think so because we might see later on she actually chained up somewhere.
Yeah, I think that running away part was a pretext, but I think that it was also a kidnapped attempt.
We think so.
Anyway, the girls, their dad wanted to do the right thing and try to find her himself, but Lizzie works it out from the letter that she got from Lydia that they're at the church that Wickham took her to, indicating that Wickham has abducted her and is taking her to there to be probably
snacked, finger food, whatever.
Brain
food.
So it's up to Jane and Liz to find their sister and bring her home. So before they get down to that, Catherine de Bourgh arrives and she challenges and tries to get Lizzie to admit that she's in love with Darcy, and that if she is, she should just pretty much forget that, or not forget it, just promise to Catherine de Bourgh that she would not enter such an engagement or such, which Liz refuses. And of course, we get a bit of a fight and all that stuff, and finally, the ladies had a truce between them, I guess. And then this is where we get Mr. Bennet plans on going to find Lizzie, and unfortunately Lizzie and Jane decide to go find her, and the rest of the family was evacuated to Catherine de Bourgh's house for safety.
I feel like the Master of Red Death, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I agree. So the girls head off towards the in-between. This is the place that's sort of near London, I think it would be.
It is, yes. London's it's supposed to be London, yeah.
Yeah, the in-between is sort of the place where the most of the zombies are at. And
yeah, somewhere, yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, the zombies are on the outer bit. I think the other people lived in the in-between area, and the fortification, which was the centre part, was where the rich people lived.
And there's only one bridge that connects them from the zombie area to the rest of England, which means that's the only way to get across to try to save Lydia. And of course, Jane stays behind because the soldiers are trying to fight off any other zombie attempts to try to breach the final bridge of the zombies so they can attack the rest of civilization. So eventually they arrive there, and Mr. Darcy is in that area, and he meets up with Liz, and she tells him the big bad news that Lydia has been abducted by George Wickham, and she may be lunch.
Oh, yeah. Or a light snack, so he was probably...
Yeah, he makes up a pretext, and he decides to go and find Lydia on his own. Of course, Lizzie finds out about this and knows it's a ruse, so she heads off and follows him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anyway, back to the story. We then eventually arrive at the church, and we hear a lot of moaning and groaning and yada yada, and...
A long sermon.
Yeah. And and Darcy heads down to the basement, and he finds Lydia there, chained up and inside a cage, or at least a prison.
Oh, you like yourself, yeah. Yeah.
And Wickham appears, and how he says some nasty things about how he thought this was Darcy would arrive, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he also demands Darcy's watch, which belonged to late Darcy's
dad. Yeah.
He demands it. Eventually, the two fight, and quickly we soon get the zombies arrive, and they're all feral.
Yeah, they've been fed some human organs, brains, whatever. Yeah, brains, yeah. And they started to go a bit savage. Yeah.
I suspect that there's I think some of the men, the minister and the other men, they found out that someone has been feeding these zombies brains from the military. Like, I suspect Wickham might be supplying the brains because he was in the military, and he may have been ciphering off a few of the dead soldiers.
Oh, why don't you tell them the truth now? Wickham's actually one of them.
Yeah, well, Wickham at this point,
he is dead man walking.
Yeah, at this point, Wickham is working with them.
Yeah, but he's also dead.
Yeah. Anyway,
they have a fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quickly, Darcy settles Lydia up onto his horse and gets her to head towards the bridge. And meanwhile, while this is happening, Lizzie sees Lydia heading towards the opposite direction, and she takes it upon herself to go back to the church and try to find Darcy and find Wickham. We get this fight scene between Wickham and Darcy. It lasts all night and day, and
a few hours maybe.
And then we see that dear old Wickham has a very big bite mark on his chest.
And you see the discoloration under his clothing, which means his body is actually a dead body.
Yeah, meaning he's a dead man walking, as you said.
That's why he gets on with the dead guys quite nicely. Mm-hmm. He's their leader.
Yeah, I think, I remember the story where Mr. Collins mentioned earlier about an Antichrist, and I think that dear old George Wickham is that Antichrist.
It's supposed to be the Antichrist. Maybe, that's what we think.
Because we keep seeing the black, the black four horsemen of the apocalypse guys who keep appearing when Wickham appears.
Around.
Hint, hint, all that stuff.
Yeah, so it could be the beginning of the end, the four horses of the apocalypse.
Luckily enough, Lizzie arrives before Darcy gets his head killed, gets killed, and Lizzie chops off one of Wickham's hands.
His right arm.
Yeah, and of course they beat him, and eventually...
They should have cut his head off. Oh, silly people.
Yeah. So quickly, Darcy and Lizzie, they quickly have to get away back across the bridge, because that last bridge is going to be blown up to prevent another a horrible zombie outbreak in the area. So they had no time left to make it. They don't have much time left, so they quickly dash towards the bridge. They lit the fuse,
and they make it just across the bridge in time when it's being blown up, and they get a bit damaged, but they're still okay. Right.
Yeah.
Move on to the next scene.
Yeah, and Lizzie cradles Darcy in her lap and says how much she likes him and all that stuff. Then we cut to Rosie's, Catherine de Bourgh's house and castle.
They're having a dual marriage.
And the girls are cleaning their muskets, and then Bingley arrives and he asks to see Jane for a few minutes.
And Jane is proposed to. We hear yippee, yippee, yippee from next room.
Yeah. We then see Darcy, who's recovered from his wounds.
Ordeal.
And he has a quick talk to Elizabeth, and he proposes marriage to her. And then we have a joint double wedding.
And who's the minister?
Mr. Collins.
Who's obviously happy with his conquest.
Yeah, he's like saying, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here for to meet this woman and woman.
This man, this woman, and this man, this woman."
Yeah.
He was funny. It was comical. Not as good as Rowan Atkinson as a minister, but it wasn't too bad.
It was hilarious, folks. Anyway, we then the couples kiss, and then we have this joyful wedding. And then we cut to the credits, and then we get the post-credits scene where the couple is smiling, and then their faces turn...
They're walking out away from the building, and their faces change.
From fear and terror.
Into fear and terror, and they see a horde of zombies coming, and who do you think's leading them?
The 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse and Wickham, with his hand being replaced by a prosthetic.
Oh, yeah, prosthetic, something rather, yeah.
I don't know.
Like Captain Hook, you know. Yeah.
Anyway, the story ends, but I suspect they survive. That's my theory.
Well, I'd like to think they did.
If they went with a sequel, which I mentioned would not have been a big chance in hell.
No, I wouldn't.
They would have mentioned it.
If we didn't get a good movie with a reasonably good ending, like that, you'd leave it hanging. You'd say, "Ooh, what happened? Ooh, that was good, wasn't it?" Yeah, and that's it. What happened? Yeah. Oh, we won. Okay, when's the next battle?
As I said before, no chance in hell, which is a shame, really, because I thought it was an interesting twist ending.
Okay, a bit of info. Now, this movie, as we said before, it's a 2016 movie, but the film, it was based on the 2009 novel of the same name, and the project was first announced in 2009. So they read the book and said, "Hey, this will make a really good movie." So it's taken about 6 years to 7 years to go from let's make a movie to having it released. So and it's gone through different directors were brought on and off. I mean, I don't think they changed during the production, but during that, it is going to come on, he's going to go off. Oh, he can't do it because he's got another thing he's got to do. It just dragged on and on, swapping and changing people all the time.
Yeah, this happens a lot. Yeah. No commitment.
Well, no, they had other commitments. They said, well, it's dragging on too long.
Yeah.
So they had to go and do the other commitments they had. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess it's not to everyone's taste. But anyway, do you mind we check out the Food for Thought reviews on why they think it's terrible?
I'm not going to go through all the reviews. I'll go through some of them.
Okay, some of them.
Someone's mouth was rattling off too much and didn't give me much time left. Okay. That's the laptops he made. My granddaughter was here and she made a cardboard laptop.
Yeah, with Pac-Man on it.
I gave her a real one last year when she was 5, but she made a cardboard one. Why would you bother?
Yeah, I hate Mike for doing that, to be honest.
What, buying a laptop?
I just mean
she's
that...
She's a very intelligent girl,
she's intelligent, but that's all she ever does. I'm trying to break her away from that habit by taking her to places.
Okay, look.
So she can actually see there's more to life than seeing it from a laptop.
Okay, right. I will say a couple of things here. A bit of filming stuff, okay.
Cool.
Principal filming started in September 2014. Okay. At West Wickham House and Park in Buckinghamshire in England. In early November, the crews were filming at Basing House in Old Basing, whatever. And then in November, they were doing film to a place called Fresham in Surrey, where they shot until the end of November. So as all location shoots, obviously it's a lot better You get the buildings. You can't emulate the buildings properly in a studio all the time. So the big buildings, the rooms are big. Let's bring the camera crew in.
Yeah.
Now, critical response. I'm not going to go through all of them.
I think that's okay.
No. But what I said before is I don't think they got the target market right. They said, if they started off, it's going to be PG-13 plus, they would have dumbed down the violence and the gore and that sort of stuff. They didn't make it adult enough for the adults to like it. You see, so I think that's where the grey area is, because little things like here, I've highlighted a couple of the reviews.
Okay, go for it.
Peter Travers from Rolling Stone gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, commenting that the movie is rated at PG-13. So the zombie gore is decidedly down a little bit, but before repetition dulls the party, the movie gets a few juicy innings. So it's got some bits in it to make it interesting. Okay. Mick LaSalle, the San Francisco Chronicle, gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, saying, compared with other Jane Austen movies, it isn't much. But compared with other zombie apocalypse movies, it's intelligent, literate effort.
Cool.
So he said, it's not a Jane Austen movie, and it wasn't meant to be a Jane Austen movie. The guy's a twit. It's supposed to be a parody. It's supposed to be, no, not. And Mark Kermode of The Guardian gives the film 2 out of 5 stars, saying, yet torn between Austen and the undead, Steers seems unsure how straight to play either element. That's what I said before. He didn't get his target market right, maybe. Blunting comedy, horror, and romance alike. The result lacks bite. The one element that zombies and Austen should have in common. So yeah, it didn't appeal to everybody because it's sitting on the fence in the middle.
I see.
That's where the problem was. One down here, Christy Lemire from the RogerEbbett.com. I won't read all of it, but the last bit says, this is a vaguely amusing idea which somehow got stretched out to an entire book, which somehow became a bestseller. So the book was a bestseller, which inevitably means it had to be made into a film. Well, yeah, but like I said, the film interpretation probably wasn't as good as the book for what I said before. Okay. Here's somebody here who there's one here, Associated Press. I won't read the whole comment. It says, blah, 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 blah. Should have been a telemovie instead of a real movie. It says, here the action and violence take up the space that should have generally been used for character development. Now, it's Pride and Prejudice, and the character development's there. We know the Bennet family. We know who they are. We know Colonel Darcy's a Colonel Darcy. He's in the army. He's
zombie killer.
Zombie killer. Everyone's sort of got their bit. You don't need to go back. So when you're a little child, I don't think you really need that too much character development.
We already know their histories.
But you still have the movie for somebody who doesn't know the history. But it was enough of a character development in it. Now, here's Britton Peel of the Dallas Morning News gave the film a B-, calling the film fun, funny, gory, and yet still strangely romantic. So he liked it.
Oh, that's a relief.
Well, yeah. And here's a good one, which I like. Literary scholar and Austen professor. Okay.
That's nice.
Daphne Lucer stated in Entertainment Weekly magazine her opinion that the film's first half, and especially Matt Smith's Mr. Collins, were comic, jarring, and enjoyable. She assessed the film overall with, I laughed a lot and I shrieked. I was wavering between B+ and A-. I'm willing to bump it up for its originality and live with my grade inflation reputation. A-. So she is a Jane Austen professor of literacy, whatever, and she liked it. So funny that, isn't it?
Funny that is
so
indeed.
she can see the value of it. So I don't think they got the target right, but it's still a good movie. Not the greatest because they pulled back on the violence and stuff. And look, if they aimed for an adult audience, they could have had more gore, blood, guts, whatever, heads rolling off on the table and whatever, and then maybe throw a ubiquitous sex scene or two or something in there, and would have been fun for all. But because they dumbed it down a little bit, that's where I think they lost out.
Yeah, I remember I have told you guys I have watched a few parodies. I even saw one where Darcy was secretly a werewolf, and it was really
nice.
And it takes place as a bit of a sequel to Pride and Prejudice, which he's been harboring, deep secrets of his own, which he didn't want to share with Lizzie until after they got married.
About that. Okay, right.
I know. I'm just telling you. I'm like that. There is some interesting stories out there. Parodies out there.
Okay, yeah, a lot of parodies are good, but in some cases not as good as the original.
True.
And this is a case where, look, I don't mind Jane Austen and all that sort of good groovy stuff, okay? But they are usually slow moving dramas.
True.
No, I'm making a comparison here. Okay? So they're usually a slow moving drama.
Right.
This is a slow moving drama. No, it's the same pace as the original movie would be. Mm-hmm. But they got a few zombies thrown in. But they didn't capitalise on enough. That's all. They should have up-tempoed it just that little bit extra to make it more interesting.
I think that if you ever read the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies book, it did. I think it wasn't as unlike the movie itself. It just mentions just the zombies a little bit, and sometimes we get a few fight scenes in the book, but
gobble.
But it's not the main part to the story. It's mostly it just follows the original Jane Austen text.
For the zombies thrown in, and like I said, they could have done better, and so that's why. Apart from that part, sitting on the fence, for a target market. Everything else is fine. The acting's fine. The scenery's good. Yeah, everything's great about the movie. I've got no problem with it.
Yeah.
But it's just that they didn't commit either way. They were trying to they walked on the middle ground a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it didn't quite really do good at the box office.
I did enjoy
the kiddies wouldn't like it and the adults wouldn't like it.
True. I did like the parodies of where Darcy's a vampire, and it really is erotic, just... And it gives me it gives me an interesting feeling.
Interesting, especially when
you have to read the books to understand what I'm talking about because it's so.
They did emulate that a bit in that fight scene,
Yeah.
A little bit of sexual tension in the fight,
Yeah, it's just that when you read parody books, they turn on the heat in some
scenes. They can do, yes.
And sometimes they would go for different directions. It's really exciting.
Anyway.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of them. I only read a few, and I'm not going to say which one's the best at the moment.
No, we're not going to.
I'm not going to rate. I'm not going to do a episode where what's the best parody of Jane Austen's books.
Yeah. Look, parodies are parodies, but listen, you can sometimes score a really good movie. You can take an average movie and make a parody out of it. And if you say, okay, I can really make that really, really funny, and if you've got a good writer to make it really, really funny, you might make a really hoot, of a really top movie out of a boring story. Mm-hmm. Or even do a remake of a movie, make a parody of the original movie. Whatever you do, it depends on who the screenwriter is and what they want to achieve with it.
Yeah. I always think that I like Pride and Prejudice, and I like the parodies, and I like the tension between Darcy and Lizzie. I mean, I like the fact that they start off hating each other, but then you see that they eventually start growing to like each other because they're
lovely.
because I think the not his bad boy qualities, but I think there's something interesting about a guy that you think is indifferent to you. There's something.
Well, I've never had a guy indifferent to me at all. Oh, sorry, I'm a guy.
But there is something wonderful.
Female, maybe.
There is something interesting
indifferent.
there. It's like some kind of unraveled mystery about them, and you can't figure out what they're about.
Yes.
I guess
It's a bit like a 19th century font. The broody person. What's going on in that brain? Yeah.
Anyway, do you want to rate this now?
8.
Okay, I'm going to rate it.
I'm only putting it down because like they're sitting on the fence. Yeah, not committing.
Yeah.
Everything else is good.
Yeah, I'm going to say 8.5 out of 10 myself.
It's still a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's a good movie, but to me, if you don't mind these old 19th century sort of stories, like Pride and Prejudice and those other sort of movies, it's a good turn on it, and it's really fun to watch. Yeah, and see these girls strutting their stuff there, killing zombies and stuff. I mean, instead of being, I'm going to play the harpsichord or play the harp or something, rather do some knitting or something.
I also like it when
it's really good.
I also liked it when they did the special books where it takes place with the men's side of the story. How they felt when they met the girls they meant to spend their rest of their life with. It's kind of romantic and really
all the girls are very attractive.
Yeah.
Actually, I like Darcy's mum better. I'm an old fella. Aunt, sorry.
Not mum.
Aunt, sorry, my mistake.
Man, this guy. I got to get you to read the book one of these days.
I'm tired. I've been out all day. The lady they called the Berg or whatever it is. Yeah.
Catherine de Bourgh.
Catherine de Bourgh, yeah. Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She's a honey. And not like I'm in my 60s and she's really good.
Yeah, anyway, that's about it for us tonight.
Well, it's not.
Oh, what?
If you wish to see this movie, it is available on eBay. I know there's quite a few there, new and used. Amazon, it is rentable, and there's plenty for sale by the apparent how it looks at the moment. Now, I would say one thing. Okay?
Only one?
Only one thing. I noticed some idiot, might have been an eBay, had the wrong date.
Really?
He had 2018. It's actually 2016.
Man, what kind of moron would do that?
Well, yeah. So when you put it, just put in the words Pride and Prejudice, A-N-D, Prejudice and A-N-D. It's not the abbreviation. And it should bring up all of these things that you want there, and it should be 2016.
Yeah. Get it, guys?
Yeah. And just look at the main actors. You've got that Lily James and Sam Riley, the main actors in it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll see those guys. Buy it or rent it. Look, if you're not commit to buying it, yeah, rent it. It's a good look, but remember, it's a slower paced drama with some zombies thrown into it. So don't expect Night of the Living Dead, okay?
Yeah, there's only one George A. Romero, and unfortunately he's passed away.
Yeah, and there you go. So I'm finished. I got nothing more to say. Fade to black. No, is that right? No?
Yeah. So that's about it for us tonight. So guys, feel free to check it out and give us your full thoughts on it. And we'll see you guys for our next podcast and everything.
Exactly.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.